everybody, it's Jamin Collar, and I just got to interview Norm Stockton, the incredible bass player from Southern California, who just came off tour with Lincoln Brewster. He's played with all kinds of people. John Patitucci came in to play on his last album. Go read his bio. He's an incredible guy. Anyway, I didn't ask him about the normal questions about what kind of bass are you playing or what's your favorite soda or anything. If you want to know that stuff, go read his bio, go read his interviews. I wanted to know more from him, what his advice was for upcoming bassists and kind of what his perspective was on playing the bass. So anyway, here you go. Enjoy. Oh, by the way, this is a Skype interview, so the video quality is not that great. It gets a little bit better towards the end. But anyway, here you go. Other stuff then here.
Hey, by the way, are you recording video or just audio?
Both.
Okay. This is totally embarrassing. Did you already start?
Yeah, but I'm obviously going to do a lot of editing.
Well, I should mention to your viewers then that if my lips are shiny, I've got Blistex on. I'm not like wearing lip gloss though.
It's not a new style for you.
It's like, what's up with Norm? He's getting all metro.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So fire away, man.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to ask you, remembering back to earlier in your career, what advice did you receive early on that really sticks out to you?
You know, there have been a couple of epiphanies. The one that sort of set my path, so to speak, is my older brother, Ray, is a guitar player. He said, good bass players, he said, good guitar players are dime a dozen. Good bass players will always have work. And, yeah, I don't know about the dime a dozen thing for all of you guitar players that are all offended right now. But, good guitar players are certainly more plentiful than good bass players. And that advice definitely has rung true in my career.
Why would you say that bass players are more rare?
Oh, you know what? It's, well, for several reasons. I guess maybe I was actually gonna modify that statement, but I mean, it seems that there are more guitar players than bass players. Just at least in my experience, most of the bass players that I come across, like when I'm doing clinics and things, started out playing bass because there were 9 guitar players at their church and no bass players, and they were like sucked into it. It's like, hey, we need one of you guys to take up bass, and usually it's only after they take it up, sort of begrudgingly, that all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, this is like a really fun instrument, And so, I'm sure there's musical communities where that's not the case, but that seems to be, from the people that I've encountered, that's more often than not the case. So it's sort of a thing where even McCartney was a guitar player and sort of got sucked into playing bass and ended up becoming this, one of the legendary voices on the bass. But so that just kind of, that seems like that was the case in most of the situations I came across.
Right. So people who are moving from guitar to bass, since there's so many of them, what are some of the main differences from a guitar player to a bass player that they need to shift in their thinking? Yeah,
that's the interesting thing. Guitar and bass, I mean, they're both tuned in straight fourths, excepting that B string with the guitar player. I don't understand guitar tuning at all, but that notwithstanding, the tuning is similar, and so it's not that hard for a guitar player to play rudimentary bass. I think the biggest shift is mental. Sort of, I guess I would put it as changing their approach from being one of the, I don't want to say frosting on the cake, but sort of, up there somewhere.
Right.
Being fundamental, foundational, the glue between the drums and the bass, or drums and the rest of the harmonic instruments, that sort of thing. Right. It's just a really different mental approach, and it's something where, the biggest advice I give guitar players who are becoming bass players is listen to a lot of really good bass players and just try to start assimilating. Okay, so they're usually there on the downbeat of the bar for one, and,
right.
And there is an interesting interaction that's going between the bass and the drums, and it seems like when I'm closing my eyes, sometimes the two sound like a unit coming at me instead of separate entities, and
right.
So I think that when people start getting that and start sort of developing a passion for the groove and all of that, then that's when A, they start having fun on the instrument. B, everybody else in the bandstand starts smiling because they're doing their job as a bass player.
Right, right. So then being a bass player is somewhat of a humble role because you're not, being the icing or however you want to put it. How does that fit into your passion for the instrument, and how do you know when you're supposed to be that structural piece and when you're allowed to come out and do something,
If you're going to be effective, well, first of all, if you want to make a living, because I do music vocationally, so there's unfortunately, a practical aspect to that, and you want to make sure that you're doing your job, just fundamentally on a professionalism level. And so to that end, you want to make sure that the people that are hiring you, or, even if you're not doing it vocationally, when some worship team is bringing you in to play on a Sunday, you want to make sure that the people that are bringing you in are happy about it. And so there's sort of a built-in thing of, I want to serve this situation. It's not, forgetting any of the spiritual aspect of being involved as a worship musician, which is a whole other thing anyway, but, or a whole other thing altogether rather, but just dealing with the musical aspect of it, I want to serve that situation and make it the best possible situation it could be. I want to make it where, if I'm being brought in, I sound like a rehearsed member of the band, and it's not like, what happened to the regular bass guy couldn't make it, and right. So there's sort of a selfless perspective you need to have in terms of, I want to serve this situation. I want to play as little or as much as I need to make this situation comfortable for everybody else and be effective as a bass player there, and so that's, that really defines a lot of what I've done as a side guy. I'm playing eighth notes and I'm trying to make it feel right, and I'm serving the song. I'm not trying to make a solo statement, Right. But when I'm doing my own solo material from my own projects, for those of you who are familiar with it, it tends to be more kind of jazz fusion oriented stuff. But if I took that approach to playing with Lincoln, or when I'm sitting in with other artists or in a recording session on a pop project or something, that would be the quickest way out the door. It's like, well, okay, homie's definitely not here to serve the music. It's kind of like he's here to make sure that he's putting his stamp on things,
Right.
And that's just from a professionalism level, that's not going to get you far at all. And I don't know if your viewers are worship musicians or not, but I mean, I know that just for those of you who are worship musicians, I mean, there's the whole other aspect of it where, we're serving the Lord. So that's yet more reason to be humble about the situation and just trying to do your best to serve the situation to make it effective ministry.
Mm-hmm. When you're listening to what you suspect to be a new bass player, what one or two things gives that away where you listen to it?
Did you say new?
Yes, new, as in like hasn't been playing long. What are the one or two things that give away, oh, you did that, you must not have played very long, aside from, of course, wrong notes?
Renaming chords unintentionally. I think that one of the biggest giveaways is rhythmic inconsistency. And, that's something I learned the hard way. And so it has a special place in my heart in terms of importance to the music, Mm-hmm. And I was young and stupid, and I'm not saying young is stupid. I was both. And I had been playing for quite a while, and I was all about the flashy playing, and I was playing sort of this prog rock stuff, and it was all about doubling the guitar solo and, or parts of the guitar solo and counterpoint to the melody line and all this other stuff. And I was in a recording session, and after a couple passes, the producer hits the talkback mic and says, hey, it sounds like you're not playing that well to the click track. Shall I turn it up for you? And one of those, oh yeah, that's the problem. I can't hear the click track, And, but in that moment, I realized that no amount of pyrotechnics was going to save the day. It was all about playing time. And that was a hard way to learn it, but it was one of the best musical lessons I've ever had, because that day my paradigm changed from the bass with the emphasis on bass guitar. You know, it's a guitar that's tuned lower. I mean, even though there's really cool things you could do melodically and harmonically with the bass, fundamentally, it's all about time. It's all about being a rhythmic instrument. And so, you know, that day on the way home from the session, I barely survived it, and you know, I bought a metronome and I really started working with it. And the reason I went into that whole thing is that I think I'm not necessarily the exception in that way. You know, I think a lot of young players get into bass because they hear their heroes doing crazy stuff. You know,
right.
whether it's Flea or Les Claypool or whoever, and playing really flashy stuff. And it tends to be later on that people start developing an understanding of what the bass's role is, and that all of that stuff is the stuff you do that 5 minutes that, you know, in my case, the 5 minutes that Lincoln walks off stage. It's like, that's my opportunity, and hopefully it's still musical, but I mean, that's my opportunity to do stuff that's more pyrotechnic in nature.
Right.
But the whole rest of the time, it's all about timekeeping, making it feel right. It's all about phrasing. It's all about ensemble stuff. And that's something that a lot of younger players or less experienced players, they haven't had that epiphany yet, you know? Mm-hmm. So that tends to be the case.
Right. One last question. When you practice these days, what do you work on?
Video editing. That's
okay. Less honest. What my viewers need to hear.
Hypothetically, if I had time to woodshed, no. You know, it's really an ironic thing. I went through periods of my musical experience where I was woodshedding 5, 6, 7 hours a day, but it's really interesting because doing music vocationally, I find that it's harder than ever to find time to woodshed. And so I have to actually be really deliberate about it. I put in my iCal, and what you can't see, I've got my basses hanging up on the wall right here. So they're right next to my video editing setup and the whole deal, you know?
Right.
And I try to make it as easy as possible so that when something's rendering, I mean, that's whether it's something's rendering or I'm waiting for files to transfer from one drive to another or whatever, you know, I'm constantly just doing little mini woodshed sessions. But when I'm finding more time to do it, which I'm hopefully going to be there soon, it kind of tends to be a mixture of things. I generally will, and you know, it's going to be different for everybody in terms of, I don't want any of your viewers going, okay, well, this is what I need to do, because I think everybody has different areas that they need to work on. For me, I tend to start out with something kind of fun and just sort of, you know, experience why I became a bass player, you know, what I enjoy about the instrument. And then I'll typically jump into something that kicks my butt. And for me personally, that will always be transcribing and reading, studying jazz harmony and that sort of thing. Because I got into jazz, you know, years after I'd been playing, and I was more of a rock guy initially. So, you know, I'll always be a student of jazz, and to me, it's a very challenging type of music. Which, you know, it's kind of interesting because most of the people that know my solo material are like, "Oh, he's a fusion guy," you know. It's like I dabble in fusion, but I'm really more of a funk, R&B, rock guy, you know. Yeah. But anyway, bottom line is that so that's this kind of stuff that I'll woodshed and then usually after that I'll spend some time just working with metronome and or drum machine, and by the way, I think those have different functions. The metronome, I think, is less forgiving, and it really requires on your own sense of time and, you know, to subdivide in the whole thing. So. Right. I tend to work with a metronome more often than a drum machine, but sometimes if I'm just jamming and just want to have some fun, then I'll turn on the drum machine.